Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we got a pretty exciting day because we have a new 3D printer to unbox. So I'm pretty excited to open it up, set it up, and do our first test print. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so this printer came all the way from China, and it's a pretty reasonably big box as you can see here, and it didn't take very long, only about a week to get here, so that's pretty awesome. By the way guys, all the links are in the description if you want to check that out. So the box is pretty generic here. There's no information about that it's a 3D printer, which could be good, depends on where you live and how you want it shipped. So it's pretty discreet. So let's go ahead and open this thing up. Alright, so I'm just going to cut the box. It's nicely taped all around. Alright, let's see what's inside. So it looks like we have white foam. So that looks to be very nicely packed and organized here. So we have a tiny amount of filament, probably enough to do like a calibration test. A micro SD card with an adapter. A very nice manual that goes into detail how to put it together. And by the way guys, this printer is called the longer LK2. So it looks like this is an assembly kind of kit, and I can see all the parts are in here. But it is pretty straightforward, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal. So we're going to take all the parts out one by one, and then we'll start the assembly process. Alright, so the thing I see here right away is this bed, and it is a pretty heavy bed. Appears to be a glass surface with a Build-Tech style material on top of that. So here we have an extrusion, looks to be the frame for the X-axis, and another one underneath that. Here we have the LCD screen, and we can see the longer branding on the front of it, and unfortunately the back is open, but I'm sure we can print a little cover for that. So here it looks like we have a part from one of the axes and a belt, a power cord that is the right kind, and looks like some zip ties. So here it looks like we have the spool holder, pretty nice, and it's all metal. Alright, I think we can take off this top piece now. And here guys, we can see a lot more of the printer assembly here. I definitely like this color here. It's like a blue, but it's not a bright blue. So the cool part is it looks like that it's all built already together here on the bottom. I do see the ZAxis rod here. And here it looks like we have another aluminum channel here. And these are probably the walls to the printer. Very well packed, and nothing looks like is damaged or shifted. So here we have the hot end. So I'm going to go ahead and try to pick this thing out. I think it should come just right up. Alright, and it does. And there we go, and that's the whole assembly. So it's nice that it's pretty much all assembled here on the bottom, and all we got to do is add the pieces to it. So here we have a few more pieces left. So this looks like the XAxis Assembly with the extruder on it. So here we have the ZAxis motor, and here on the side we have the hardware tucked away. So everything we'll need to put this printer together. Alright, so that looks like that's all for the box, so let's get out of the way and bring the printer in. Alright guys, so we got all our parts here on the table. So as you can see, this is a little bit involved and you will have to assemble things. But as intimidating as it looks, it's actually not too hard. And it looks like we have a really good manual here that we'll be able to look at and hopefully be able to put this thing together and get it running. So here on the top section, it just kind of shows you what is included and all the parts that you should have. So before you start building, what you might want to do is you want to go ahead and check if your printer is sitting level. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to loosen these bolts here on each side while putting the printer on a flat table, and then retighten them when this thing sits flat. So the reason you want to check that is because your base here, where you start with, is very important as you go up. Because if this is twisted, then as you go up, everything will be twisted, and then you will not have a smooth operating printer because you'll be binding, and weird things will start happening, and that'll affect the print quality and the life of your machine. So always take your time and make sure everything is carefully positioned so all your axes will line up nicely. Alright, so I went ahead and tightened mine, and my frame was really straight, but you want to make sure. Another thing that's very important that you want to do is you want to go and tighten all the bolts on your legs here. These obviously. And actually the most important ones that you want to make sure that are tight are these four right here on this Y-axis rail here, and mine was really loose and it was just moving around. So make sure all your bolts are nice and tight, because the last thing you want is things to shift. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to adjust the eccentric nuts on the bed here. So the bed right now is rolling around fine and it doesn't have any wobble in it, but I want to go ahead and recheck that, because sometimes they're too tight and it'll shred your little wheels underneath right away, or very shortly after printing your wheels will get destroyed. And it's pretty simple to adjust them. So on one side here you don't have eccentric nuts, and on the others you do. And let's see, hopefully you can see those. Yeah, right there, those eccentric nuts. So the way they work is when you spin them, it puts the wheel in an offset position farther or closer away to the channel here. So what we're going to do first is loosen that bolt, and you might have to use the wrench on the other side to hold the nut. So just loosen it a little bit, just so it's a tiny bit less. And so here now we can see that we're wobbling. So what we're going to do is we're going to, on the first one here, pick any one. So we're going to start tightening it, and just barely when it starts tightening up, just leave it alone. Then go to the next one. And just turn that until it barely bites. And when I say barely, I mean like just starts to have resistance, you stop. And then go back to the first one, and again check it, back it off, and then, you know, just the slightest grip is all you want. You don't want anything major. So once you get the slightest grip, go ahead and tighten the nut, but make sure that your eccentric nut here at the same time does not churn, because if it does, you're gonna just, you know, make it too loose or too tight again. So it's a little tricky, but not too bad. You just have to pay attention to the nut. So once you feel like you got that just right, so there shouldn't be any kind of movement in this, because if you have it too tight, you might feel the channel because you're pushing too hard on it, and the wheels maybe have a little bit of off center or something. But you should be really smooth, no binding, and no wobble, obviously, and not being too tight. So once you're happy with everything, tighten it all up and you're done here. Now we can start building the printer, but before we do, let's go ahead and look underneath here. So it looks like here on the top is where our logic board is, and I don't know if I'll be able to show it to you guys very well, but you can see that, or at least what I can see there, it does have little heat sinks for the drivers. And the power supply here, it is tucked away here on the bottom, and all your connectors here are pretty protected and insulated correctly, so it should be pretty safe overall, especially when it's just sitting there. You can see we got a nice clean back with a power button. So now we're going to go to step one, and which is the two rails that go on each side of the printer here, and that is these two guys right here. And the only difference between these two is that one of them has two little holes here on the front of it, and that's going to go to this side over here. So the bolts we're going to be needing are the 25, or number 25. And if we go to our key codes here, the number 25 screw. So the way they're doing it is visually. So you visually find the correct screw, or should I say bolt. All right, so our bolts will go all the way up here. Start the channel there, and that's it. And I went ahead and got that started. And the thing that you want to note is that you don't want to tighten this yet. So just screw it where it first starts to bite, and then just let it go. You want it to be loose, like right now it's moving around. And the reason you want that is because as we're going up, we want everything to be square, and we want all the parts to align with each other. All right, same thing here. We'll go ahead and start that. All right, and that's it. And while I'm over here, this is quite important, especially if you have 220 voltages, is that you want to go ahead and switch the power supply here to your voltage. So we're already at 115, and that's what we need. So you want to make sure you don't forget that, because if you do, you could damage the printer. All right, so let's go to step two. And step two, we're going to be building the XAxis assembly. So we have the single piece assembly here that has our extruder motor here and the XAxis motor. And here, guys, we can see that we have a filament detection sensor right here, which is really cool. So if you run out of filament, you know, your printer is not going to just keep printing. The M416 bolts, 4 of them, are a smaller channel that has the holes all over it. So there's one with basically no holes, and that goes on the top, and there's one that has a bunch of them like this one here, and that's what's going to hold all of our assemblies here. And so the way this thing's going to go together is, hopefully you can see this, guys, but on one side here we have like a clean rod, and on the other we have wallowed out area here, and that's for the bolt right here to go into that. So essentially it's just going to go kind of like that into it. So once you get it on there, you're going to grab your little bolts and you're going to go inside there just like that. And the cool part is they have holes here on the top where your Allen wrench can fit. And you can go ahead and screw them straight from the top. Hopefully you can see that, guys. So because these don't have any kind of play at all, you can go ahead and tighten these 2 bolts there all the way so they're nice and snug. So step 3 is we're going to put the hot end assembly or roll it onto the X-axis channel here. So before you do that, make sure your cable is, because it's going to go back in the back there. So make sure you're nice and not tangled. If you do, twist the hot end around here. But just make sure it's free and happy and nothing is too twisted. And so now we can go ahead and slide right in here, just like that. So I can definitely feel that we're going to have to adjust that. It's definitely too tight, seems like, because I can feel the channel here vibrating through the part. And that's one way you know that you're too tight, is when you move it like this, you got like little jumps and vibrations. Like it's not completely just smooth as ice. That's what you need. Alright, so the next part is step 4, which is this bracket here. And also the tensioner for the belt. So again, we're going to be using the M4 16 bolts. And so this bracket here, it actually goes on the back side. And you can see there's a little wallowed, hopefully you can see, there's a little wallowed out place for this bolt right here to go into. And it'll just simply go in like that. And your bolts will go through here. And we got 2 of them. One over here and then another one right here. And we can go ahead and snug this thing up really good too, because we will not be able to reach it to tighten it up later. And so that's what that looks like. So now we're going to go back to the front here. And this is where the idler pulley goes. This is what you're going to tension your belt with. And that just goes right there. And by the way, the idler pulley goes on the 2 outside threads there. The middle one is actually the bolt for this bracket here. So we can screw them in, but don't tighten them because we will have to move it around. Alright, and that's it for step 4. And this is what you should look like once you're done. So as you can see, guys, it's not terribly hard to put this thing together. It only looks intimidating in the beginning, but technically we're pretty much halfway through, so, or at least the more complicated things. Alright, so step 5 is putting the belt on. So here's the provided belt. So the way the belt goes is it hooks around here in a loop, and then you're going to zip tie it to each end. And then it's going to go all around through this pulley here, and then back up underneath these wheels inside the channel, and then all the way through here around this idler pulley, which is also the adjustment for the belt, and then back under and back to the hot end assembly there. So I found starting from the top is the easiest. You just put the belt in there and just go straight underneath the wheels like that, and then it'll come out right here. And then we're going to just loop it right back around and go underneath. And so now we can go ahead and make a little loop and zip tie it together so we can attach it to the bracket like that. So we got provided zip ties. So what you're going to do is make a loop just like that, and then we're going to put a zip tie on it. And so essentially what the zip tie does is it pushes the teeth together where they don't slide out. And that's it. Make that really tight. Put it on this end here. And we're done. And obviously we're going to cut this off, but before I do, I want to make sure that this side goes in good also. So same thing, we're going to come around, and as we can see, we got plenty of extra belt. You want to do this is you want to have the idler pulley about halfway, and we can go ahead and snug it just a bit so it doesn't move while we're doing that. And the reason you don't want to go one way or the other is because you have to have a little bit of adjustment play. And so now that we have that, you can go around this thing and just kind of get it semi-tight there and hold it in that position, and then take it out, and you know that that's going to be the perfect size. And so now we can go ahead and put the zip tie on this one. But before you put it on, you have a little bit of extra belt here that you don't need because it's going to be in the way. So go ahead and chop that off. But make sure you got everything right before you do that, because you can't make this longer. You can make it shorter, but not longer. So we're going to go ahead and cut these zip ties also. Alright, so now we're going to come around, hopefully hook our cable here. And it's a little bit loose. Undo our adjuster pulley here and pull it back. And that's it. Now our cable is on. So I probably could have been a little shorter because I'm almost maxed out here on my adjuster puller here. So you might have to play around with it just a little bit to get it just right. So now we can see the belt is running on the X-axis here. So once you've done all this, you're done with this step and ready to go to the next step, which is step 6, and that is to put it on the rails. And so putting it on the rails is not too hard. So make sure that, you know, all your wires and cables are good. If you have to, twist it around. And then we're just gonna roll right into the rails. Just like that. And that looks to be a pretty snug fit there. So we're gonna need to adjust that, all these eccentric nuts here. But before we do that, I'd like to put the step 7 in, which is the rail that goes on the top. And that's this one right here. And so the way this one goes in is the cutouts here, the walled out part is the top and this is the bottom. So this simply just goes right on top of that. And then we're going to put the M520, the last 4 bolts, into that channel, just like that. Alright, so once you screw the bolts into this, don't tighten them yet. What we're going to do next is we're going to adjust the eccentric nuts on the XAxis assembly here. And that's very important because right now all of our frame parts here are loose. So this thing should be able to travel up and down perfectly without having any kind of binds or anything like that. And the reason you want to do it like this is because you want to make sure that the frame is in the most correct position that it can be for the Z-axis here to move smoothly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to adjust the eccentric nuts over here and the other one is over here. And we're going to use the same method that we talked about on the bed. We're going to loosen them up and barely tighten them and leave it right there. Alright, so once you're happy with that, you should have a very smooth, and you'll know when it's smooth. So once you get to that point, you can go ahead and start tightening up the frame, which I'm going to start here from the bottom. So, and as you're tightening it, you know, keep checking it, make sure it's still good. Alright, so once you get those tight and you still have excellent motion, then bring this up to the top and tighten the top bolts. Alright, so now we can go to step 8, which is putting in our Z-axis motor with the Z-rod and the coupler. Alright, so here we have the Z-axis motor, the screw rod, the coupler that one side goes in the motor and the other in the rod, and that's it. So let's go ahead and get this rod out. And if you want to check that if your rod is completely straight, you can roll it on a flat surface and see if it has any kind of, you know, fluctuations in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise this and then we're going to screw the rod into here. So it's pretty simple, just, you know, screw it into this coupler here. So then we'll grab our coupling. And I'm not sure which couplers are the best, but I really like these because they flex in all directions. So you can see those little cuts there, so it acts kind of like a spring. So if there's any give that needs to happen, it can do that. So the part with the smaller hole goes into the motor here, and then the larger one is where the rod will go in. So on the motor shaft there's a flat part on the shaft there, and what you want is you want to line up one of the tight screws right on that flat. So once you get that lined up pretty good, you can go ahead and tighten it right there. And you're going to want to make this, you know, relatively tight. It is small little parts, but they tend to loosen up over time if they're not tight enough. Alright, so now that we got that, we'll raise the X-axis here and we'll set this right underneath. So right now this rod is completely loose and it goes exactly straight into the coupler. So now I'm just going to go ahead and tighten everything up. Alright, and that's that. So the next part, we'll just need to install these 2 bolts here, and they'll go right through here, right into the frame, and they will line up perfectly while this thing is sitting on the channel there. So now we should be able to just touch this thing and it should be going down. So after this, what you're going to want to do is bring the X-axis all the way down, and it should be going pretty smooth, but mine was binding up just a little bit here towards the end. And I think the reason for that is because the lead bushing here that mounts is not completely orientated with this correctly. So luckily there are, hopefully you can see that, but there are 2 little bolts right there, and there's slots that can be adjusted farther or closer away from the channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen those bolts, and we're going to let the lead screw kind of like vibrate exactly where it wants to be, because your most important part is down here, because most of your prints are going to be, you know, in this range right here. You know, it's going to be more rarely when you go up all the way, so you want to get your lead screw really good down here. So once it's free and it's wobbling exactly where it wants to be, kind of, and mine moved a couple millimeters out, now we can go ahead and tighten those little bolts on top, And we should have a very smooth travel now. So I got it up. Let's go ahead and push it down. And it's very good. So it looks like we got that part right, and that is it for the Z-axis. And as you can see, guys, it's not too hard to do all these things. If you just take your time, if you just pay attention to the workings of the mechanical parts and kind of understand, what does what, it's much easier to align everything and, put it together. All right, so step 9 is putting the spool holder on and the Z-axis switch. So here we have the Z-axis switch, and that's what it looks like. And it has a little T-nut here to hold it in place. So the T-nut is pretty simple to use. You just put in the channel, turn it, and then tighten it where it grabs to the channel. So unfortunately, there is not a specific place where this little switch goes. You're gonna have to kind of figure out. In the manual here, it says that it's about 12 millimeters. So 12 millimeters is not very much. I think this wrench here is about 10 or so. And they're referring to from the bottom of the switch to the top of this beam here. So that should be pretty good right there. I'm just gonna leave it right there. And now we can go down and kind of see where our little wheel here will hit the switch. So about right here, and it seems right about perfect right there. So, but we can adjust this later when we put our bed on, and we can see a lot better of how much we need to go up and down. So you will need to be cautious about where you put this switch. All right, so the next part is the spool, and that just goes on the top, and it also has the T-nuts that will go in and then they'll turn, and that's how they'll tighten up. So what you're going to do is we're going to just go in here on the top somewhere, and we're going to put it in just like that. So I like to go, as close this way as possible because, I have a little better chance of feeding into the extruder down here. So yeah, now we're going to just snug it up really good. Don't do it too tight because this flange here, if you pull it too hard, it'll damage it. And that's it. Now we have a little spool holder here. All right, so now we are at step 10, which is the bed. So we need to get our bed, the little springs, those long screws there, and the little nuts. So there's a baggie here with all of that stuff in it. So here we have the bed, and it's very heavy because it has glass in it, and it is shrink wrapped also. So let's go ahead and peel that off. So here's a little tip, guys. If your hands are greasy from the, working on the Z-rod there, because the Z-rod is lubricated, don't touch the bed surface here with your greasy hands because, grease tends to, flow into things and kind of linger around. And it'll be hard to clean it off later, and you might have issues with sticking and things like that. So just be mindful of that. So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 clips here that hold the top part. Let's go ahead and unclip that, and so we just should be able to take these off. Simple as that. And then our pieces will split up. So here on the top we can see we have this, and on the other side we actually have glass. So technically, if you did want to print on glass, you could just flip this around. Or obviously you can print here. But that's kind of cool that, you could use both options. So here is our bed, and it is a heated bed. And we can see the heat elements all inside there. Kind of can see those ridges there. That's what's heating up the aluminum on this side. Then we have a pretty nice little plug right here. All right, so let's get our hardware out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put all these long bolts through the top of the bed, and then we're going to put the springs like that. Now it might be a little hard to do everything at once, so you might want to have to do one by one on each corner, but the easiest way seems like just to grab two like this with your fingers and then put it in, and then we'll go to this side and we'll just lift it and put our springs in there just like that. And technically our bed is on, and we have the spring action there. So now we're just going to take our little nuts here and we're going to screw those on each corner. So you want to compress your little springs a little bit. So you don't want to bottom out compress completely, but you want to compress. Let's say if the spring was this big, you want to compress it, about halfway or so, how much it will compress. So that way you can go a little bit up or a little bit down from there. All right, so our bed is on. So now we can just put the glass part back on and then clip it, and we're done with the bed. All right, so the next step is the screen. So the touch screen can go on either side. It can go on this side or this side. And the ribbon cable that it comes with is super long, as you can see, guys. So it could easily reach just about anywhere, but you will have to manage it a little bit so it doesn't, get ruined. So because I want my screen on this side, I'm gonna pop off these little covers and install them on this side. So these are just decorative caps. So and here is our screen, and it's a pretty, you know, simple little screen here, and our ribbon cable will plug right in there. And this is the size of it. It's not large, but it's a decent size. So I haven't really figured out how I'm going to do the ribbon cable, but for now I'm just going to connect it, and that should just slide in there. There's a little black tab that you'll have to pull out first, and then you take your ribbon cable here, and with the leads facing down, kind of hard to show you guys, but just like that, put it inside the socket there. And once you do that, you just push this black piece down and that locks it in. So then we're going to grab our last screws, which are the M5/6s here, and attach the screen to the frame. So we're going to go ahead and tighten this nicely, and our screen is on. Alright guys, so believe it or not, we're almost done. We have the last step, which is connecting all the wires, and that should not be very hard at all because everything is labeled. So if we go here to the side where we installed our switch here, we can see there is a smaller plug and a bigger plug. The smaller one is for the switch and the bigger one is for the motor, and it should say Z on both of them. So this one has a Z and this one has a Z, just like that. Back here into the motor. So we're done with the Z. So let's go up now from here, and we have the X-axis. So here we have quite a few wires, and each one is labeled. There's two little ones. So one of them is actually a filament detection little plug, and that's the one that has an E on it. And the X little small one plug, that's the one for the switch on the X-axis, which is right in here in this channel. So let's go ahead and plug that one in. The E small one goes up here, and then we have two larger ones. The X-axis, which is for this motor here, and then we have the extruder motor right here, and that's the E. And that's it guys, it's pretty simple. So here we are at the back. We have the heated bed cable that comes straight out of the middle from the printer in the back, and that'll just clip right into the bed. Now the Y is already all connected because we got the Y switch here, the Y motor also connected here, and that is all the wiring guys. So one thing that we have not done that I've passed is we haven't stuck this Bowden tube here, the PTFE tube, into the extruder assembly here. So and that's as simple as just pushing it in, and that's it. Give it a little tug, make sure it's holding good. You're done with that. So now what you want to do is you want to move all your parts from the printer back and forth. Make sure everything is moving like it's supposed to be and not hitting anything. And listen for the switches so they click. Move the X-axis all the way to this corner here. So you can see that this tube is, it seems a little short because it's kind of on a stretch here, but most likely you won't print this far. That's on the very edge. But it should be alright. It looks like it needs to be just a little bit longer, but in any case it's fine. And obviously, you know, you can go all the way this way and it's totally fine there too. And obviously you want to go all the way up on the Z-axis also, just to make sure all your cables here are long enough and you don't have any issues anywhere up here. Everything is reaching, everything's fine, and everything is smooth. Definitely make sure that everything is smooth. And by the way guys, you don't want to be pushing this back and forth too hard, especially when it's all connected, because these motors do generate electricity, you know, while you're moving the parts. Alright guys, so if you did everything right, your printer should look like this, and everything should be moving smooth back and forth, up and down, and there should not be anything funny or binding or, you know, stretching or things like that. So now that we got to this point, we can go ahead and turn the printer on and get to know the UI here, and also level the bed, and obviously check if all of our things are working, which we can do by homing it. By the way guys, I did forget to adjust this X-axis here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that right quick. Alright, so that should be good right there. Alright, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna plug in our power cord, and I definitely like how they went this route and covered everything, and they gave you a nice little button here to turn it on and off. And our interface is in the back, so it's a little bit maybe inconvenient, but it's nice that the USB is back here, but the micro SD card slot is also back here. And it shouldn't be too hard to get. You can just reach around it and put it in. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and click the power button in the back, and we'll see if it powers on. Alright, so it looks like we powered on, and I can see the screen glowing here. So before we go through the UI, let's go ahead and home this thing and make sure everything is moving right. So I clicked on move head, and they do have a little home button over here, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. So you want to be ready to turn the printer off just in case something goes wrong in this first time homing. So I'm just gonna eyeball it and hopefully it'll stop where it needs to. All right, so it definitely stopped early and it's fine right where it is. So it looks like we have about a quarter or a little more from the nozzle to the bed right now. So we might be a little bit more off than I thought. All right guys, so let's take a closer look at this display here. It's actually pretty nice overall. So I'm just gonna go back. So where we we're at the move head. So when I click that, you can see we have plenty of options here. And there is our home button right there on the edge. So you can move the Y, the X, and the Z right here. So if I click that, it's going up right now. Here we can lock and unlock, or I guess unlock the whole stepper motors. So if the stepper motors are locked and you can't move anything, if you just click that, it'll unlock everything. Definitely love the shortcut buttons, super cool. So let's go back. So here we have files, and this is where you would print. So here we have extrude. So if we click that, we can see we can control the extruder right here. So what I did is I clicked that little plus there and the hot end started warming up. So yeah, once this thing preheats, you will be able to move the filament with these buttons, controlling the extruder motor to pull it in or out, or even has out of. So we'll check out how all that works. So here we have preheating. And so we have the hot end here, we have the bed, and we have hot buttons here, PLA, ABS, PETG, and we also have a cool down button. But if we hit PLA, let's say, we can see that our hot end set to 200 and our bed went to 60. And that should start warming up, and it is. So yeah, very user friendly here guys. So here we have recovery, which is not available because we are not in recovery mode. Let's click more. Here we have bed leveling, and check that out guys, there's actually 5 points on the bed that you can level by just clicking on it. Wow, I really like that. That seems very intuitive. Here you have an unlock button if you want to move it by hand. We'll be trying this out here in a second because we're going to need to level the bed. Let's see what else we have. We have settings. So it looks like in the settings there's a lot more advanced options here. So I'm not too familiar with all this stuff here, but you can see that it has quite a few options. Alright, and here we have the about, and this is everything about this printer, and here we can see the build volume, and here we have the firmware version and the date when it was released. And it looks like that's everything, and once we click more, we go back to the home page where we were at in the beginning. Alright, so I want to go ahead and level the bed, so let's give that out a try here. So I'm just going to use a little post-it note here as the reference between the bed and the nozzle. So I'm going to go ahead and click one of the points here, and as you can see we are way too high. So let's go ahead and loosen this spring here. Let's say maybe that's alright. So we'll go to our next point. Let's just say on this side. And here we're also too far. Let's go to our back corner back here. So yeah guys, as you can see, it's a pretty easy process here. And that seems about perfect. It's a little tight. So yeah, but I'm loving the way you do it. It's so simple. You can go to any corner you want, to the center or wherever. And so it looks like we have our Z switch in the right area because we have a good amount of compression on these little yellow springs in there while being already almost level. So alright guys, so the bed is leveled and everything is good. So this test filament that they gave you is so tiny. I'm just going to go ahead and get a roll of filament that I have. So I got this green filament by Plasfil. So I'm going to grab the provided micro SD card here, plug it in the back. So we'll go to preheat, PLA, and so the machine will start preheating. Actually, I do want to move this up a little bit. I don't want to preheat right on the bed there. All right, so it heats up pretty quick. It's already at 190, so let's see if we have purge. Okay, yeah, it's going. So we are pushing through, I think. All right, there it goes. I guess we need a little more than that. Okay, so I'm guessing that's the measurement here on the edge. What we were looking at earlier is how much it purges. Let's try 1, see if it's shorter. Okay, yeah, it is shorter. Very cool. So this controls how much it purges. So I'll just leave it on 10. Seems to be a good number. So let's check out what's on that SD card. So I'm going to click on files here, and they do have a Benchy G code and some other G codes. I guess let's go with this first one where it says 30 millimeters and see what that is. You sure you want to start printing? Yes. And here guys, you can see all the information that we have here. So the bed is warmed up and now it's going to the extruder. And there's our progress bar. How long it's going to take, I guess 30 minutes looks like. And the status is heating right now. It looks like here we have some more options. So here we can adjust stuff. Pretty awesome. What does this do? Okay, that's another one. So yeah, really loving this display. It has a lot of a lot of features guys. Alright, so it started. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully our bed leveling is pretty good. Alright, so the bed leveling is actually pretty good. Looks except there is a huge booger there that we need to get rid of. So I wasn't able to grab that booger, but it looks like it might not be in the way too much. All right, guys, so it's printing and it's pretty exciting. We'll see what it prints so far, and it's looking really, really good. So everything seems to function, and our bed leveling appears to be perfect or close to it. So the assistant on the bed leveling is awesome. Definitely makes it really easy to level the bed. So yeah, I'm just gonna let it print and we'll come back and we'll see what it comes out to be. All right, so the print is done and this is what it looks like. So it's apparently some kind of box, maybe like a calibration box. So let's see if we can break it loose here. All right, so that came off pretty easy, but it was stuck on very well. And it looks like it did print on a raft. Let's see if we can break that loose. Not too bad, guys, not too bad. So on the very bottom, looks like there's something a little bit funny there, but other than that, the walls and everything look very good. And it definitely looks like a square box. So I'm going to try to print some more things, and I'm going to print off of the G-codes that are in the screen here on the SD card, and we'll see how those come out. Alright, so I went ahead and printed a bunch of stuff. As you can see, this is everything that was on the SD card. So we started off with this cube here, which was a calibration cube, and it turned out good. Then the next thing that printed was this bullet looking thing. And you can see, guys, that it does a really good job. If you look at the sidewall here, it's very accurate. So all these prints did print with a raft, and the raft is stuck on there pretty well. But the quality of the print is awesome. So after that, it printed this little child looking thing. And if you look closely at the layers, you can see that they're very nice and accurate, but there is noise in the print, and that's actually from the stepper motors. So looking at the accuracy of this printer and how good it does, an upgrade with some TL smoothers will make this thing awesome. It also does have a little bit of an issue on the overhangs, but it's not terrible. But that has something to do with this fan here. I don't know if it's blowing completely where it needs to be or not. So after that, we printed these little owls here, and they turned out really good also. So you can see all the details are really good, and all the parts that are printed feel very solid, like they're not brittle at all. And this was also printed on a raft, I guess, and it's not coming off very easily either. So the last part that we printed from the SD card was not on a raft, but it did have a brim around it, and it's this little fox. But yeah, it turned out pretty well also. But you can see we still have that same pattern all over the print. And the overhangs on this fox are a little bit rough. So we're definitely going to have to look into that fan and make sure that we're blowing correctly. Or maybe even do a little upgrade to that. But the details are awesome, guys. I mean, this printer is very accurate. And you can see by the cracks here, I guess that's intentional. So you can kind of see the detail. And even the ears have that same little crack offset. So the last part I printed on the G-code was this benchy, and I changed it to black filament because black shows everything very well. So I kind of wanted to know what kind of detail we're looking at overall with this printer, the way it is from the box. And as you can see, guys, the benchy actually looks very good, but there is a lot of artifacts like Salem skin there and just noise and vibration in the print, and you can really tell that on the walls here. And all this can be fixed easily, guys. This can be like perfect. So you can see, guys, what you can expect out of the box with this printer, and the potential of just a few little upgrades to this thing could make it amazing. So the last thing I printed is on the bed still, and it's stuck on, and it's a wheel. And I actually sliced this in Cura, so let's go ahead and take it off here. So it's a wheel for an RC car. It's like a drift wheel, and it's completely solid, so it's quite heavy. And I used the blue filament, and you can see here on the back we do have supports. And then, you know, this part in the middle actually prints separate until they connect right at the end here on the top. So it's kind of a demanding print because, you know, it has to go up, taper up, a lot of retractions and things like that. So just by looking at this wheel, I mean, it did really good if you just look at the reflection. I mean, that is awesome. And so I feel like that because I sliced this myself, it turned out a little better than the G-codes that were included there. But it still has that vibration patterns in it. as you can see there in the reflection. So yeah guys, overall I'm very happy with this printer. I think it's a great printer for what it has to offer. It definitely is very intuitive to use. The interface here with the screen and the touch screen work excellent, and it's definitely one of the best that I've used so far. And putting this thing together overall wasn't too difficult, and I think just about anybody could do it. It has a great size bed, and not only that, it's a glass bed, 220 by 250 or 60, so, and that is an excellent size for the majority of everything you will ever print. I definitely love the interface here, the filament detection guide, so if you run out, it'll pause your prints until you change your filament, which is a nice feature to have if you do very long prints. And also if you lose power, this printer can resume your print after that. So overall guys, I think this is a great printer. With just a little bit of mods, this thing can be an excellent printer. And that is pretty awesome to say because, these lower budget printers have come a long way of what they can offer us now for the money. So I would definitely recommend this printer to anyone that knows that, you're gonna have to build it. And also you might have to tweak it a little bit after that to get the perfect print. Now with that said, every printer that you're gonna buy is going to be like that. There's only a handful of printers that you can start off with and not do anything ever, and those are usually running quite a much higher price than this. So I think this longer LK2 has a lot to offer and could definitely compete with its competition with all the features that it has. And the material quality on here is all excellent. So yeah guys, a big thumbs up for this thing. And if you're interested in this printer, I'm gonna leave some links in the description. Check that out. So Longer here has lots of different kind of printers, and they all seem to be pretty high quality. So go check out their site. I think you will be pretty impressed with what they have to offer. Alright guys, well hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it was definitely a little long, probably my longest video so far. And if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you. Hopefully this video was informative and interesting to watch. I'm definitely going to be making an update video on this printer with some upgrades and things like that, so stay tuned for that. Also guys, if you enjoy videos like this and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button because I do a lot of 3D printing on this channel and I have a lot more stuff to come. So if you like this video, then hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this and you're not subscribed, then hit that subscribe button. I already said that, didn't I? And as always guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.